What's up everyone, welcome to Kai's channel. Today we'll be doing a comparison between the F91 original version against the Chronicle White version that was released recently. If you actually watched my review, you'll know that the major difference on the Chronicle White is the white coloring itself. But other than that, is there any other difference? That's what we'll find out today. Alright, without wasting any more time, let's get started. So starting off, we're going to cover the box. As you can see on the left, it's the original version. It's actually in a black background, and then next to it is the MSV option set that's in a completely different packaging. That's because it was actually sold separately on the original version. Now on the right, it's the Chronicle White version, and then you can see that there's the cover on the far right. Now without the amazing cover on the Chronicle White, you'll probably think that that's actually the original one because of the usual design that we've seen often on the box. While on the original one, the black background gives you a somewhat a limited edition feel to it, so don't be mixed up between the two. Alright, enough of the box, let's move on. Now here you have is the F91, both of them in their original form. As you can see right off the bat, the major difference is actually the white, that goes without saying. The original one, it's actually a gloss white, while on the new one, it's a matte white color with a major yellow tone to it. Now this way, it's almost as if it's your product been damaged by UV by putting it under the sun for too long. That's how it looks like. Now here in this video, I'm not going to go too much onto the white because if I were to go on, I can go on and on and on with that. That's how much I don't like about the white. So instead of me telling you how bad it is, you can see for yourself just how much difference between the two. Now aside from the white coloring, the blue is actually very different too. Now on the original one, you can see that the blue on the chest piece is actually a gloss metallic blue, while on the new one it's actually a matte blue that's a lot lighter than the original one, as you can see. Now on the new one, aside from the yellowish white, which I call the Chronicle White, there's actually the other white as well. It's pure white. You can see that on the side of the thigh and some of the parts that shines very apparent. So while the new one has two tones of white, the old one is actually one single white color throughout the entire thing. Now another thing you probably noticed is that the antenna on the head, the original has this metallic gold color. Although it's a little bit pale, it looks very nice. While on the new one, it's brighter, but it's not a gold color. It's actually a matte dark yellow, which I really think that they should have put a metallic color instead of this matte color. Not sure why they did that. Now in the original one, there's actually these silver linings that goes throughout the entire body. You can see it very clearly on the chest, but on the shoulder and also on the arms, as well as on the ankle guard, these are actually there. Because of the lighting, you probably won't see it as clear as it should be. However, on the new one, there isn't any of these silver lining, but instead it got replaced by these red lines. That's actually a lot less compared to the old one. And you can see this majorly on the shoulder tip as well as on the ankle guard. So as you can see on the decals, the original one, the F91 letters, those are designed very differently. Now aside from the F91 letters, on the old one you can see that there's the Formula Project on the left shoulder, while on the new one, both the shoulder has these logos. Now on the top, the old one also has these text on the top of the left shoulder, but on the new one, there isn't any of that. Now similarly, you can see that on the waist guard, there's the logo there, the SNRI, where on the new one, there isn't any. Now on the knee, you can see that the little triangle on it, it's very small on the old one, and it's designed a lot bigger on the new version. And on the old one, there's actually these linings that looks like Formula Race car designs that's on the left knee, but we have none of those on the new version. Now as for the back piece, you can see that there's actually a lot more logos on the old one, whereas on the new one, there isn't any. As for the top of the thruster, you can see that on the original one, they have the Formula Project on the top, and then you have this blue and red strip right underneath that. While on the new one, there's this banner which says SNRI and Formula Project F91. On the ankle guard, on the left, there are these texts there, while on the new one, those are replaced by the cautious text that's replaced on both the legs. Now both of these has these warning or cautions text all over the body, but on the old one, those are in blue text, while on the new one, those are red. So that's it with the main body coloring. Let's move on to the armament and accessories. So here you see all the armaments and accessories of both versions laying right out in front of you. Now clearly, both of them actually host the same amount of armament and accessories, where each of them has no more or no less than each other. So both of them actually comes with the same set of items on both sets. Both of them, obviously there's the color version difference, which we'll go into details in a bit later one by one. So starting off, we have the basic Vesper that's on the original F91. The Vesper stands for Variable Speed Beam Rifle, and on the original one, it's actually fully white, and then you got this bright blue on the tip of the rifle. Now as for the old one, just like the rest of the body, there's two tones of white. The pure white is on the bottom and also on the top piece, while the blue, it's a darker blue than the original one. As for the tip, the original one it's white, and then the new one it's black. The decals are actually very similar. Both of them has the SNRI logos on it, but the new one has these tags, the long form for the Vesper that's labeled on the side, while on the old one, those are the silver linings, just like the main body has. Now going back to the blue on the Vesper, the old one, the blue on the Vesper doesn't match with the blue on the chest piece. It's totally two different color. And it actually looks kind of weird when you actually display the two Vesper in front. Now on the new one, they totally fixed that. They unified the color using the same color on the Vesper and also on the chest piece, so it's definitely great that they did that. So next we have is the beam launcher. Now both of them looks very similar, even down to the logos. Aside from the white, the major difference is that the wires on the original one, those are bronze, while on the new one, those has become silver or dark gray. And then you can see going all the way to the back, the new one just has this F logo, while on the new one has this text that says formerly Project F91. And then finally on the panels at the back, the old one is a silver color, while on the new one, those are just matte white. But aside from that, they're very similar to each other. Next we have is the rifle. Now the rifle is actually very similar to each other. They're almost identical, if I must say. Aside from the white, almost all the colorings are nearly identical. There's only a very slight different tones on color on the metallic colors, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. Next we have is the missile launcher. Now the missile launcher is again very similar, but I think on the original one, there's actually more design to it on the decals than the new one. The new one has only these red lines and then the danger logos as well as the SNRI. But on the original one, there isn't the danger logo, but you have these silver linings as well as these red dotted lines and also the SNRI that's on a different location. But aside from that, you can see on the top, the gold, it's actually a little bit different. The gold on the original one is actually a lot brighter and shines better, but on the new one it's actually a little more pale, but it's a metallic gold color as well, so definitely the original one looks better. Moving on, we have the beam Gatling. The original one is a single gloss white color followed by these blue text and decal lines, and then the wiring it's gold color. On the new one, there's two tones of white. The pure white is on the tip, and then the decals are all in red, and the wiring is silver. So if you ignore the white, it actually looks pretty decent on the new one as well. Next we have is the beam unit. You can see just like the triangle on the legs, the original one is a very small triangle, while on the new one it's a lot more bigger and apparent. So definitely a better design on the new one than on the original one. And as for the expanded beam shield effect, aside from the point that we talked about for the unit, the clear parts is actually relatively the same, only with a minor different colorings onto it. And as for the beam saber handle, the original one is a gloss white with a light gray color on the tip, while on the new one, it's also a gloss white but with a silver coloring on the tip. Now when you put the beam effects onto the beam saber, the beam effect itself, both of them it actually looks very similar, and there's actually not much difference from what I can tell. Now as for the MSV shoulder, on the right shoulder, obviously the white is different, but as for the original one, there's actually a little more design compared to the new one. And it's in dark blue, while on the new one, it's actually black. But the gold exhaust fin, those are actually identical, so there's no difference on that one. While on the left shoulder, again, the coloring is different and the design is different too. Original one has the Formula Project, while on the new one it says the SNRI and then the Formula Project F91, very little on the bottom of that black piece. So quite a different approach when they designed it. Finally, both of them has this non-transformable head that you can actually interchange the mouthpiece to get whichever type you want. And aside from the white and also the antenna, basically they look identical. Although there's no difference with the non-transformable head, but as for the transformable one, there's actually a little bit different. As you can see right now, on the original one, there's this little gap between the two mouthpieces that's actually a little bit wider than the new one. Now I mentioned this on the review video that on the original one, no matter how much you push the two mouthpieces together, there's still a little bit gap between it that you can't seem to close very well. While on the new one, this seems to have resolved quite well and the gap is actually a lot thinner than the original one. So definitely they have improved that point on the new one. So as for the twin Vesper, obviously there's actually 4 different Vesper on the backpack, but for the smaller Vesper, you can see that the original one, there is actually a dark blue coloring on the tip of the rifle, and then with these very nice silver linings on it that looks absolutely beautiful. And then you have these EFSF words above that. While on the new one, those are actually a metallic black color on the tip of the barrel, and then you have these very small prints that says Formula Project and then Variable Speed Beam Rifle, which is the Vesper long form, and then finally the SNRI. So aside from the white, the new one's actually fairly acceptable. As for the bigger Vesper, similarly to the one just now, on the tip of the rifle you got this dark blue and also this silver lining. And then newly on the back you got this SNRI logo, and on the new one it's fairly similar the same. The SNRI logo is at the same location, and then in the middle you have the Formula Project, Vesper, and then SNRI that's labeled in the middle. And then you have the metallic black on the tip of the rifle. So again, aside from the white, it looks pretty decent. Now aside from the coloring, the new one, all the joints are actually very tight, even the antenna connecting to the head part as well as the shield unit on the arms, all of them are actually very tight when connecting to it. So that's actually an improvement compared to the new one. And also the slider underneath the arm. Originally I said on the review that actually the new one it's actually a lot smoother, but it seems like I remembered it wrong. Both of them is actually very smooth, so there's actually not much difference between it. As for the base of the display stand, on the original one, you got this big F91 text that's right across the center, and then you got these small logos that's silver right underneath that, but they're not very apparent as you can see. While on the new one, you got the F91 shadow right there on the left, and then on the right you got the Formula Project F91 in blue, and underneath that it's the Gundam F91 in red. So in design, definitely the new one looks better. So just before we go to the conclusion, there's actually a little more comments that I would like to make for the white color on the Chronicle White. Now this point that I'm going to talk about is actually from a fellow viewer, Andrew right here, that actually mentioned that the white on the Chronicle White might be similar to the white on the Estrella, as it is not a pure white either. Now that's a really interesting point, because prior to reading this comment, it actually never occurred to me that this would be actually the case. So in order to prove that, here I have digged out my Estrella and to match together the two colors. Now it might be very difficult to see when they are so far apart, but I took one part from each of the Gundams and put them next to each other, and I must say that it's actually very similar. So similar that I had to use a computer to check the coloring on the RBG scale to see which one's actually darker. And to my surprise, the F91 is actually a tad bit darker than the Estrella, only very slightly. You probably can't even tell the difference if it wasn't with the computer checking. So with that, I hope to actually bring to you guys just a reference on what you're going to expect when you're getting the Chronicle White. If you happen to have the Estrella option set, you can take one of the parts where it's actually a little bit yellow. Those white, that's actually the white, nearly the same as the Chronicle White here on the F91. This will make a very good reference point for those of you who's actually still worried about the color on the Chronicle White. And I must thank Andrew for pointing this out, which is very helpful. So in conclusion, which piece is actually better? Now on the new one, there's definitely improvement that was made compared to the old one, which is first, the tightness of all the joints. It's actually very tight, even on the connecting piece on the shield unit to the arm as well as the antenna to the head. Those are actually very tight. Now not that the original one is bad, but it's a lot more tighter on the new one. Second of all, the decals line, it's now red, which is a lot more apparent than the original one, since the original one are these silver linings on a gloss white surface, so it's actually very difficult to see. Third, the mouthpiece on the transformable head, the gap between the two mouthpieces is a lot thinner on the new one, which as I mentioned before, on the old, it's a lot bigger gap than the new one, so definitely major improvement on that. And fourth, the yellow triangle on the new one is actually a lot more apparent as well. Those are really nicely done on the front and back of the legs as well as on the shield units. Whereas on the old one, those are very small yellow triangle. You can hardly see them. Not to mention that the display stand looks better on the new one as well. And lastly, which is the major point, which is the new one does come with the MSV option set, so you don't have to bother to go out to find the MSV option set separately. So that's very nice for those of you who missed out the MSV option set before. Being that said, the major hurdle when choosing between the two has to be the yellowish white that's on the main body of the Chronicle White on the new one. Now not a lot of people can accept it. I for one has major difficulties accepting the white. Like some people said, it looks as if it's already a UV damage when this piece is like completely new. Now no one wants to buy something this expensive just to find out that it's already sunburned when you open the box. So definitely this is not for everyone. Now there are people that are okay with this Chronicle White, so if you're one of them, then this piece is actually definitely for you. But for those of you who cannot accept the white coloring on the new one, or you're worrying about if you get the Chronicle White, would the yellow be something that you can accept or not, and you're still pondering between the two, then I would say that for you guys, definitely go with the original version. And you don't have to worry anything about that because the original version looks just that nice. But the downside to that is that you'll need to find the MSV option set separately. But as long as you can get through that hurdle, then definitely the original one will be better. As for myself, I'm definitely going for the original version because I cannot accept the white on the new version, and also the silver lining, although it's not apparent, I actually like that a lot. Now if only they can fix the blue on the Vesper to be the same color on the chest piece, then I have no complaints on the original one. So that's it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it and find it useful. As always, please hit that like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.